Today I'm actually visiting a friend who runs a tabletop wargaming store. I've always been quite interested in wargaming, but more than wargaming, more than tabletop wargaming, I am actually very interested in painting miniatures. Although I may not want to get into the hobby myself, but I've always been really fascinated and impressed by the amount of attention and effort that these people put into miniatures painting. So when my friend offered to give me a free lesson in painting miniatures, I couldn't say no. Tucked away in an older part of Petaling Jaya, Frontline Games is a surprising existence in a mundane row of shop lots. I've known the owner of the store for more than 20 years, but I think it's best he introduced himself.
Hi, I'm Kenneth Wu. I run this shop, Frontline Games. So we dabble in war game systems, specifically Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 from Games Workshop in the UK. Our hobby is, it's been around in Malaysia for quite a while, since the 90s,
Kenneth provided me and my two friends with a small Space Marine to paint. He gave us some pointers and we were on our way. The first thing I realized is that it was a lot easier than I expected. The paint stuck onto the miniatures really easily, and the whole process is a lot less intimidating once you get into it. Still, it'll take me years to get good at this.
You can actually start with just a figure and 3 paints. You start from there, and then you ask yourself, what do I need? I buy one more paint, and you just keep adding to it, and your collection just gets bigger and bigger. You just get more paints, and then every figure that comes in next, you have all these paints ready. And then like the brushes, you look at it like, the brushes are $30 each, and then you go to your local art shop and there's brushes for like 30 cents. You get a bunch of 30-cent brushes, you use it, you break it, and then you start seeing the value of maybe if I spend $30 on a brush, I could get you hold the tip better, it will last longer, right? And then your collection just keeps growing. You don't realize how much you spent on it until you actually you step back and over like 5 years I spent this much, right? But you do feel it because every so often you're just buying a $30 brush, a $9 paint, a box of $50 for a bunch of Imperial Guard, Space Marines, whatever. Yeah. So it starts like that. Getting the paint on the figure was already an achievement for me. I was like, it's so easy to get on, because of the pigment is actually really strong. So you think that it's going to be you've got to build it up and it's going to be such a pain in the ass, But when you try it out, you're like, just getting the paint on, wow, okay, this is an achievement, right? And then as you add more colors, it's getting more and more complete, right? And then you feel accomplished when you finish one figure. You're like, wow, I finished one. And then you finish 10 of them. You're like, I've got a group of them now, right? And then you paint a vehicle. It's like, you've actually done a big vehicle, like this guy, right? You've done this, it's like you've got a vehicle, right? And I think after a while, then you get an army. You're like, okay, I've got an army now. It sort of just rolls on itself. Every little achievement you make, sort of it just kind of drives you forward. Yeah.
The pieces on display in Kenneth's store were beautiful. It really makes me wonder how much practice, time and effort went into these pieces. As I painted more, I found myself slipping into a zen-like state. I wasn't doing a good job, but seeing the miniatures slowly change from solid black to a vibrant blue Space Marine was taking off all of my boxes.
I think different people come to it in different ways, I think. For me, it was seeing a huge Space Marine in front of a shop in Penang, right? After you go to the wet market, you have your little tidbits and stuff like that, and then you see this massive Space Marine thing. You're like, what the heck is that? It's like this huge power armor thing. You're like, okay, that's cool. So for me, it started off like that. I just like the imagery of it. I guess it takes a catalyst, for a person to get in, really get into something, right? For me, I had a friend who gave me, I think, 3 pots of paint and a figure, and he said just go wild, So then he just gave me a bit of a tutorial. It was like, just try to put the paint on, and it stuck on very well. So I'm like, okay, So I just started experimenting from there, and after that, you feel like you can do it, You're like, what else can I do? There's actually many facets to this hobby, right? There is playing the game, right? Some people just want to play the game, and some people they want to paint. They want to sort of experience that that joy of painting their miniatures and making it really nice. What would make you feel accomplished at the end? Is that what model really speaks to you, right? And then we start looking at the paints. Like, okay, so what paints do you need? What methods are you thinking of using, right? Some people want, some people they say that, oh, I'm very afraid to get to this high level methods and all that. So can you teach me something simpler? And some people say that I want to be I want to go for competitions. I want to, I've seen sort of competition pieces and they look amazing. I want to get there.
Kenneth started Warhammer in high school and has been passionate about the hobby for more than 20 years now. It's great to see that he's taken his interest and turned it into a business that supports him. And you can really see his enthusiasm shining as he mentored our nascent painting efforts. Just as his friend once did, he provided us with some paint, a paintbrush, and a figure and told us to go wild. At the end of the day, we each had a painted Space Marine as a small token. You can see ours compared to Kenneth's. His Space Marine is on the right. At a glance, we did quite well, but it is only when you pause and inspect the details that you can see how much more that we could have done. There's no feeling quite like the trance that you get into when painting miniatures. You think you spent 20 minutes painting, but in reality, you spent 3 hours. Time flies when you're having fun.
I think I have a funny story because there was one of the veterans back then, right? He was, I think, one of Malaysia's best painters at that time, back in the, before the 2000s, right? So he would say that because his army is so well painted, he says that the moment I deploy my army on the field, I've already won because it looks way better than yours. He was really arrogant, but he was funny, we actually liked him.
Заливай лик, поцелуй на шею, эй, эй, как там, правда назад.